Now this may look like an ordinary bottle of Nyetimber, it's classic Cuve, but it is in fact a vintage release. Their standard classic Cuve these days is what they call a multi-vintage, which is otherwise known as a non-vintage, which is in fact a blend of multiple different vintages. So I think perhaps multi-vintage is a fair name. I think this was the case about sort of a decade or slightly less ago, that they were still doing individual vintage releases, even of the standard classic Cuve. So you can tell by this code on the back. I'm not sure where else the... Oh yes, so there is a vintage statement there, 2009. And there's also this code on the back, so we can look up all the details of the particular blend of that year, one or two other technical details there. I'll get into those in a moment. So this is a 15-year-old English sparkling wine. It's pretty venerable. The bottle doesn't look particularly beaten up or old, but that is a decade and a half of aging that has had. I feel like it requires a certain degree of ceremony to open it up, so thus the sabre. Nice clean break there. I don't think I actually got it in shot particularly well. It was difficult with the phone, that slow motion thing, to actually get the whole thing in the frame. Oh well. Let's talk quickly about that technical information on the Nyetimber website. So as always, you type in this code somewhere on the back here, and then it gives you the breakdown of the grape varieties. So the blend here is looking pretty similar to the half bottle of mainly 2020 based multi-vintage or NV that I had the other day when I was doing that champagne versus English sparkling tasting. 55% Chardonnay, 26% Pinot Noir and 19% Pinot Meunier. What I find really interesting here, and I'm wondering if this is maybe a typo, so it says the bottling date is July 2010, riddling 2012, but then the disgorging date is given as July 2024, i.e. a month ago, and 14 years after it was bottled. So has this really spent 14 years on the lees? I kind of find that a bit hard to believe, to be honest. Possibly a typo. Is it meant to be 2014 when it was disgorged? Bit confused about that. You know, if that had had 14 years on the lees, I would expect the first whiff that I got here to be just overwhelmingly yeasty and or bready, and I'm not getting that. I'm getting more of a sort of fruit character that you get with Nyetimber, which is some combination of lemon and or apple, because it's a Chardonnay dominant blend. Baked apple, baked lemon, is that a thing? And yes, there probably is more autolytic character than I saw in that MV or NV the other day. A little bit more sort of bitter lemon type notes as well, sort of lemon peel, that kind of thing, rather than just straightforward lemon. Yeah, definitely going a little bit more citrusy. Something bready, but it's certainly not overwhelming the rest of the nose. That is impressively fresh tasting. However, it has spent the last 15 years. It certainly has not lost its zing. I'm sure it must have mellowed a little bit since that first bottling, but wow, beautifully zingy and refreshing and mouth-watering. Lovely mineral notes right from the start there. Citrus notes going a little bit beyond sort of lemon peel. I've got a slight sense of something like kumquat, something slightly sort of exotic in that mix there. And there's some subtle honey type notes, a little bit of stone fruit, peachy sort of character, and that's obviously something the roughly 45% combination of those two Pinot grapes is contributing. Apricot, possibly peach, something in that sort of area. Overall, quite a dry effect there. Usually feel like with the younger Nyetimbers, those MB ones, you get a little bit more of a sense of sugar on the palate. And I think the dosage is pretty similar here. Was it 9 grams, did it say in that technical information? But it really does taste quite dry. So I suppose is that just the effect of aging, that the sugar has kind of softened over time? But it certainly isn't lacking acidity, which is great. It's showing signs to me that it absolutely is not slowing down. This is not a wine that is nearing its last legs, already on a decade and a half, but the acidity is in really good state. There's still plenty of fruit evident there. I'm sure that's got another 5, maybe 10 years left in it to keep aging and keep developing. Nice. Cheers.